You see, the priests in the Old Testament were called to stand between God and the people. They were supposed to plead with God on behalf of the people. They were supposed to bring sacrifice to God on behalf of the people. That was their calling as priests. When a house was found to have leprosy, the priests used to come and check it out. Not everybody could do that. It was a work of priests. When humans and God had a problem, it is the priests who came to deal with it and removed the issue. It was a work of priests. But my friends, today, just as those days, many of those priests let God down. They did things because of the prison situation. They did things that actually brought shame to the name of the Lord. And even now they do. I was watching news last night in my office. And there was this pastor who was getting married, who was wedding. I don't know how many of you watched that. Did somebody watch that? This pastor is getting married and the man has a wife. How many kids? 3. Nigerians say 3. 3 children. He abandons his wife and is trying to do a wedding. She showed up. The man did not say she's not his wife. He just ran. Entered a car and they left to another place and she followed. This is what I'm dealing with. The disgrace. The priests, the pastors, the preachers, the bishops, the scandals hitting us are too bad. I was talking to my son yesterday morning. He told me one of the big preachers in America, the father died, left him a big university. Last week he was arrested by police. A place where you're supposed to drive 15 miles per hour, he was doing 100 miles per hour last week. The police arrested him. Looked at him, he looked funny. They took the, what do you call it, alcometer? What do you call it? This, eh? So they said, come on, we want to find your breath. It was more than what alcohol, more than what drunkards have. And the previous day he had been doing a healing service. God is gracious. People were still getting healed. How? God, help me understand. So he was taken to the police and there's a case going on right now. In the 70s and 80s, there was a man, I won't call his name. Let me just call him Free. This man was a Pentecostal evangelist and self-styled seeing prophet in the late 60s and 70s, who, despite his hippie appearance, had notable success as a minister and evangelist. Mr. Free was a key figure in the Jesus movement and was involved in the rise of 2 denominations I won't mention because you know some of them. Now those of you who don't understand, the Jesus movement was a big movement in the 60s. The Jesus movement in the 70s. It was a big thing worldwide. And that's why I remember some Kenyans, they used to go to America just for the Jesus movement thing. Now this man was involved in the birth of 2 big denominations. Even now, they're big. Both churches later disowned him because he struggled with homosexuality, which he always thought was sin, removing him from leadership positions, then ultimately firing him. He died of AIDS-related complications in 1993. Man of God. There are too many here. I don't think I want to go into all of them. But let me read one more. This one is too common. I think I'll do 1 or 2 more. I don't want to. Okay, this gentleman, let me call him Jay. He began to attack some evangelists on the screen, 2 evangelists. He uncovered their affairs with members of their churches and also helped expose the infidelity of another preacher. These exposures received widespread media coverage. So one of the preachers who was exposed retaliated in kind by hiring a private investigator to uncover this man's, Mr. J's, own adulterous indiscretions with a prostitute. Mr. J was subsequently forced to step down from his pulpit for a year and made a tearful televised apology in February 1988 to his congregation, saying, "I have sinned against you. I've sinned against my Lord. And I would ask that the Lord's precious blood would wash me clean from every stain until it is in the seas of God's forgetfulness." Mr. J was caught again by California police 3 years later, that's 1991, with another prostitute, Rosemary Crusher, who was riding with him in his car when he was stopped for driving on the wrong side of the road. Now, the Bible says your sins will find you out. Why did you go on the wrong side of the road? God allows those things to happen so you can be caught. I mean, that is why he stopped me. That is what I do. I'm a prostitute. 3 years, the man repented in church. 3 years later, still doing the same thing and still preaching. Prison holds people, drives them into doing things they don't want to do. They know it's wrong. My friends, we are in trouble. We need help. Yes, let me read this one. Books, wonderful material. One book has been used by churches and cities when they come together. Yes, describe some things in that book which are very, very critical. But listen to this. I love this man, by the way. When this happened to him, I felt pain because I asked myself, where do we go? Because we see a lot of excitement and yet things are going on. And the challenge is the gift of discernment does not seem to be working in the church. That's why integrity is such a critical matter in a life. Beyond the pulpit, find out how the preacher lives. I advise you, talk to his wife. Talk to people close to him or her. Because we give you what we have. If I'm living in adultery and I do this, my friend, you receive the same spirit. I hope you're with me. Listen to this one. Mr. T, let me call him Mr. T, was the pastor of this church in somewhere and was the president of the National Association of Evangelicals from 2003 to 2006. His position allowed him occasional access to President George Bush. In 2006, it was alleged that he had been regularly visiting a male prostitute who also provided him with methamphetamine. Chemist, do you understand methamphetamine? It is, I was looking at the formula, C15H something. This methamphetamine is a central nervous stimulant used in treating narcolepsy, Parkinson's disease, alcoholism, depression, and obesity. This man, Mr. T, admitted his wrongdoing and resigned as pastor of the church and as president of Evangelical Alliance of America. The high-profile case was significant also because it immediately preceded the 2006 midterm elections. In January 2009, Mr. T admitted to a second homosexual relationship with a male church member on CNN TV and other national media, and when asked, would not directly answer a question about his other possible homosexual relationships. Mr. T has recently started another church. Because the man is a good preacher. Very good. He can move you to tears. He began a church with 8 people. By the time he was leading, it was over 25,000 members in America. That's not a joke. Now, for him to be able to use this meta something, That means he was dealing with either drugs or alcohol. And on Sundays, he was preaching. And he had a family. Wives, I'm praying for you. Some of you persevere things which you don't want anybody else to know. That's why it's always good to talk to the pastor's wife. It's good to do that. Many of them will not tell you anything. Okay, we are okay. We're doing fine. But some of them are going through hell. What should we do? There's even another one here. I've been to his church, not preaching. I was in America one time, and I visited Atlanta. And I told Eric is a young man who was in this church. He lives in Atlanta. I told Eric I would like to visit 2 churches. And one of them has come to Kenya here, worked with some Kenyan preachers, even done some project here, hospital or something. So big church structure. One wing, there are classes, 24 classrooms. Huge place. The dining hall and the gym is like this hammer, where they go to eat after service. I mean, just imagine that. They have to shut the gate when the church is full. No more room, no more parking. This gentleman found himself in trouble. September 2010, several civil complaints were filed against him by men that stated he used his position as the church leader to entice and coerce the men into consensual sexual relationships in exchange for money, travel, and goods. At a press event on 26th of September 2010, he stated that he would fight the civil complaints in court and would not comment on the allegations. On 27th of May 2011, this bishop settled the matter out of court. He settled the matter. I was talking to my son and asking him, how is it? He said, people are wondering, why did he settle it out of court? What was it that was going on? My friends, we're facing a challenge. Challenge of prison. People are in prison. They're doing things they should not do, but they have no control on it. Preaching, standing on pulpits, defiling the name of the Lord. And it's serious. It's both men and women. Some of you know by this lady was with TD Jakes. Huh? Joanita Bynum. It's on internet. If you go to, you know what she went through? Got married to some man, Bishop Weeks. Allow me to mention that because that spread all over. The man beat her. He used to beat her. She used to go for meetings with bruises. People think maybe she just applied something. Maybe she was fasting and praying and whatever. She didn't. People did not know that she was being beaten almost every day for several years. They separated. The man found her at a shopping mall, public in the parking lot, beat her thoroughly. She ended up in hospital. 1 year later, the man married another prophetess. From one prophetess, why can't we prophesy these guys are bad boys? We need to deal with it. May God help us, because this is a serious matter we are dealing with. There are prisons holding people. Almost the things I'm talking about affect kings. When you look at people like, if you look at the next category, those in power, in authority, the same things affect them. Apart from the preachers and the ministers and those who serve God, there's government leaders, political leaders. Many of them don't depend on the God of heaven for power. Many of them depend on the Masonic lodges and witchcraft. Do you remember 2007 elections? How they brought in witch doctors from Tanzania with snakes and put them in 5-star hotels to manipulate the minds of Kenyans. And let me tell you, they were so capable of manipulating the minds of Kenyans that even Christians voted based on what they wanted. In some countries, you can never get certain positions unless you belong to a Masonic lodge. Some of you went through something some years ago. Don't joke with these Masonic fellows. They're serious. They dictate who comes to power. Some of you think it's just votes. We thank God for votes. But there's a lot of high-level manipulations. That's why they determine where nations go. They are controlling economies. Most of the stock exchanges in the world are under the control of Freemasons. Go to the story of New York Stock Exchange. Read the inside story. And ask yourself, who is pushing it? Most of them are in the Masonic Lodge because they're in charge of the economy. They control the economy. Not using the Bible, but using satanic powers. Prison minds. Ordinary people have also been part of this. The Bible is very clear. When God looked for the prophets, looked for the princes, and looked for ordinary people, the normal neighbor, the normal friend you meet, the one who is not a big name in the country, who is just a business person like you, whom you work with, you meet and connect somewhere. God says,